Hi guys, I'm Anita. I'm back with another video. This is the third Stephen King batch review I'm doing. I started this series of reviewing or talking about the books that I read of Stephen King's because I'm doing a project of reading through all of Stephen King's books. I'll leave a link to a playlist up here that I've created that will have the project, what it entails, and all of the videos I've done previously as well. So since last video I've read 5 more books by Stephen King. It took me a while to get here, but still. And I am obviously going to try and talk a little bit about the books that I read, what my thoughts were on them, and if my top 5 has changed of the top 5 books that I've read from Stephen King so far. In today's video I'm going to be talking about Cujo, The Running Man, The Gunslinger, Different Seasons, and Christine. Those are the next 5 books in chronological order of Stephen King's books. Then you might think, wait, have you read Gunslinger while I've been watching you on YouTube? No. That is actually one of the first Stephen King books I ever read. I read that back in 2014 in November, and yeah, I think that was November. But I'm going to talk about them today. A little bit about my thoughts on each books, and then afterwards tell you whether they have moved some of the books around on my favorites list. So the first one, as I told you, is Cujo. It's set in Castle Rock, Maine. Same location as The Dead Zone, which, I mean, if you've started reading Stephen King's, there's a lot of his books that takes place in the same areas, and they pull from other things that happened recently, and this one definitely talked a lot about the Dead Zone, which I love the Dead Zone, so those references were amazing. But Cujo was set in Castle Rock, and it follows sort of 2 narratives. It follows the perspective of a family of 3. They are 2 parents, obviously, and a boy. And the boy is having issues sleeping because he's afraid of the scary people in the closet. And we follow the perspective of Cujo, a dog. And he's a really good dog, but then he gets rabies, and slowly the disease is changing him. And the sort of way that it changes him is something that you pay attention to over the course of the book. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really, really good book. I was actually hesitant when I picked it up because I think I've heard people say that they didn't really like this one. But I thought it was just great. I thought it was interesting seeing this book from a dog's perspective. And the things that he went through. And he's trying to be a good dog still, but slowly this other thing is taking over. And I thought that was written so well. And there was a lot of interesting things happening, and I was not expecting the end to happen. So I was super invested in this, and the narrator of the audiobook that I was listening to was so good. Why did I not give it 5 stars? I think I gave it 4 stars at the time. I'm not sure. It's definitely one I remember that I really enjoyed. There were probably a couple of places where it could have been better, but it was still a really, really good book. The next one is The Running Man, which is one of those Stephen King books that he wrote under the pen name Richard Bachman. And this one, the Bachman novel has continued to not be my favorites. I think there's a lot of them that I don't connect to. This one was about another one that is about a competition where I almost forgot it because I rated it so low, so I have a hard time remembering what exactly it was about, but I feel like it was something to do with our main character having a kid who was very, very seriously sick. I don't know, I remember if it was cancer. And in this world, the poor has a really, really hard time getting access to money in order to treat his daughter. And he gets in a competition sort of thing where he can win a bunch of money if you and I feel like that's sort of the part of the plot, but I have forgotten so many things of it. So I'm a little vague on this, and I think I wrote down that I gave it 2 stars. So it's definitely not one I personally recommend, but I'm not saying that it's not a good book for some. It's just not a book for me, and I would have loved it to be better. The next one is The Gunslinger, which is the first book in the Dark Tower series. So this is when this happened. And actually the reason that inspired me to start over with Stephen King's books is because I was told that there's a lot of references to the Dark Tower series, and that I should read that first and then go and read the other ones. That's what my brother told me anyway. And I was like, cool, then I'll go and start out with the fantasy that I know, and then I'll work on the horror books afterwards. But then I found out that is not completely correct. That yes, there's a lot of links and stuff in the Dark Tower series, but they take references from other books, not the other way around. So that are characters from other books that he's written previously that shows up in the Dark Tower series. So I didn't want to be spoiled about that before going further into the series. So that's why I started this project. Actually, the Dark Tower or the Gunslinger, what I remember is that I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. It was slow in places, but there was something about the way that he explained the world that was really intriguing in my opinion, and there was something about the whole Western part of it that actually was intriguing to me, because I hadn't been reading any Western related fantasy before. And there was something about the Man in Black that was interesting. I thought that whole mystery about it, and the way that Stephen King writes children, I already knew back then that he did that really well, because Jake, who is a child of I don't know how many years, I think he's like 5, 6 or something like that, goes on the journey with Roland, the Gunslinger, and so that part of it I really enjoyed. But I think I give it 3 stars as a whole, because it was not the best, and I'm happy I was told that it gets better, because I don't know if I would have read on in the series or with Stephen King. But yeah, so a 3 stars for that one. The next one on the list is Different Seasons by Stephen King. This was not the exact cover edition I was hoping to get, because apparently this cover shares another cover that is like these with the same ISBN name. So yeah, but this is a collection of 4 novellas. So this one is not necessarily a short story collection, but a novella collection, I guess. The first one in here is the most famous one, and that is Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption. So this is the one that inspired the movie, The Shawshank Redemption. And it started off so strong. That story is 5 stars. I loved it. I loved how hopeful it was. I loved all the messages. And I also knew this story from before, because I've watched the movies a bunch of times, and I have read part of the book back in school for English class. And I remember enjoying it somewhat, but I was not a reader back then, so I never finished it. But I'm happy I did read it this time around, and it was amazing. The narrator of the audiobook that I was listening to, he sounded like Morgan Freeman narrating the book. And because of that, it was amazing, because you know, the Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption is narrated when it's written form by Red, who in the movie is played by Morgan Freeman. So I thought that was a really, really great narrator choice, and loved it. I gave it 5 stars. The second story I didn't care for as much. It was sort of about Nazi Germany, if I remember correctly. What was the third one? There was one with a train and some kids. I feel like I'm messing up about the last 2 stories, but I know I gave the first one 5 stars, the second one 3 stars, the third one 4 stars, and the 5th one 4.5 stars. So why I don't remember the last one, I am unsure of at this point. But I did really enjoy this collection as a whole, because then the average rating comes down to 4.5 stars. So that is what I rated it on Goodreads, and I'm really happy I read it. This is one of the books that I purchased before reading it, because I had such a strong feeling about this collection, especially because of the first book, and I am happy I have it, and I will definitely try and reread it at one point in the future, sometime. Who knows when. Then it took a long time before I got to this one. The fifth and final one from this round's video is Christine by Stephen King. You know, I recently read this last month if you have been following me on my channel. This one is following a group of young kids, and one of them is Arnie. Arnie is a boy who's been bullied a lot in his time, and he is having a difficult time with things, but he does have a really good friend in in Dennis. Dennis is the one who's narrating the story, and Dennis immediately gets worried when one day Arnie decides to get a car. He has just seen it and he just knows he wants to have it, and it makes Dennis worried because the moment he sees that car, it's as if Arnie is changing his personality, and it gets more and more worrisome as time progresses how much he's changing. And yeah, it's definitely creepy. It has some really strong, it's a really strong story, and I really enjoyed it in that I just wasn't scared. I enjoyed it a lot, but I wasn't scared, and I think that's why I'm not giving it 5 stars, but it is a really well told story. All of the Stephen King books have different things to offer, I think. To sum up, has this made me change my top 5 of Stephen King's? I think last time I had The Long Walk on the 5th place, because it's one of the Batman novels and the only one I really enjoyed of them. And then I have the short story collection Night Shift on it, because I like to have a collection here. Considering I don't have very many 5 stars, this was a really strong 4-star collection for me. And then I have Salem's Lot as a 3rd spot, which I gave 4.5 stars, a really scary, spooky vampire story. And The Dead Zone, which I gave 4.5 stars. On the top, The Shining. That was the standing before. And now the only thing that has changed is possibly that this one was added to the mix. This is a 4.5 stars. It is a better collection in my opinion than Night Shift, even though Night Shift was amazing. So now it says The Shining, The Dead Zone, Salem's Lot, different season, and I guess the Night Shift is still on here because it was 4th before. So I bumped it down to 5th, and that means that The Long Walk has left the top 5. Still, I really enjoyed that book, so it's difficult because I am enjoying a lot of these Stephen King books, and I'm happy I am reading them. Last time, with my last video, I realized how happy I am reading them in order, because it would make me pick up Stephen King books that I have never heard of before, and that I wouldn't have picked up otherwise if I hadn't made this a project for myself. And The Dead Zone is one of them, and it's one of my absolute favorites. It's the 2nd favorite of all of the Stephen King books I've read so far. So I'm super happy I did this, and hopefully next time there's going to be even more. I'm currently reading Pet Sematary, and it's definitely very good, but you have to wait and see for my October wrap up how I am ended up feeling about that book. Yeah, safe to say I'm excited about where the project is going, and I'm definitely keeping on doing it. I don't think I'm going to stop anytime soon, so yeah. But this was my Stephen King batch review number 3. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of the books that I've talked about today, and what are your thoughts on them. Have you read which of Stephen King's books have you read, and are there any of them that are your favorites? And also let me know if you have any interest in starting out by reading Stephen King's, and how would you tackle it? Will you tackle the most famous ones first? Or will you tackle the series first? Or would you tackle it like I do from the beginning and onwards? there's a lot of ways to read Stephen King, I guess. Definitely let me know if about that in the comments below. Yeah, and but this was all I had for you today. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video very, very soon. Goodbye!